What's up, guys? Frank Macaluso here from Garageaholic, giving you another episode of the E30 N54 right behind me. If you guys are new to the channel, you are in for a treat today. There is a very good chance that we might end up doing a first start on this N54 engine, fully integrated into the E30 chassis. We got a lot to do today. We got intercooler stuff, we have wiring, we got to go through. We have a lot to cover with wiring, and I'd love to go through it with you today. And hopefully, if we're lucky, we'll get to that first crank and first fire up. Guys, stay tuned. You don't want to miss this one. This is going to be a good one. So the intake manifold is in. Started making a couple of additional connections to the map sensor. Tightened up the bolts here for the alternator and the starter. Got the charcoal installed. Basically just kind of reassembling the whole engine. And I started fooling around with the wiring over here as well. Got this kind of sorted out. Got the two boost solenoids here ready to go. I want to install them in a place where it's incognito, away from, you know, keeping the smooth engine bay kind of look. But I also started working on the E-box here, and it looks like I'm going to have plenty of room to take this and basically make slots and holes where I need to go right in the sidewall here. That allows this a very simple installation. Get to that in a second. But this guy, you know, we can just make slots, put all this in here, put all this in, and then install the DME, and then we'll put all the electronics in there pretty slick. I got snaked back all my grounds and my Y and my positives, so that all that's going to also be in the E-box. And this piece of loom here actually is a stock part, and it goes inside of the bridge. And the only reason that this existed was primarily for routing the two reverse wires. Basically, it comes from the DME, goes out, around, down below, and into the transmission. But we're not going to be doing that, as I stated a couple times already, that we're going to be reusing that in a different location. Here, we have now a location to take all of our wiring from our C101 and snake it across into our E-box for our X6001 connector. This is a perfect opportunity to use this already existing loom and repurpose it. So the loom will be going in there. There will also be a couple of additional wires for oil pressure and the coolant temperature as well to go into the C101 and back. It'll be great. This is actually be a really nice slick setup. I'm super excited about how this is going to end up turning out. So as far as what I want to do now, I want to continue to work on the E-box. Let's just recap where I'm at right now. So what I did is I created this template. It's a very crude model, but it goes and it slips right. It slips right into this guy, right like that, right? Right. There we go. So it slips into here. So I'm basically making like a mirror image of what that will be in these two locations. These two sizes are exactly the same, so that's great news. And all I need to do now is basically cut these out, cut them out, and it's gonna be cut all the way across, right? So these are gonna be like pieces that end up getting slotted in. So essentially, this is gonna be like a box out, like if I draw this a little bit more like this. So this is gonna probably end up being like boxed out like that, right? But the real cut is going to actually be all the way across, so that you can obviously get, you know, the wiring harness still in and out, right? You need to get it in and out. So this piece here that's marked with an X, let's say that one's with a Y. The Y is going to be the removed part of the sheet metal that's never going to be reused again. It's literally going to be a hole. But X is going to be reused as a cap. So I'm going to end up making something that allows this piece X to get reinstalled, and it continues the cap, so it makes it look like it's seamless even after you take the whole cover off. So we need to do both of these guys. We're going to cut down 4 different cuts, and then we're going to cut across. I'm probably going to end up doing that from the inside, and then we can at least slice these guys in and then get our wiring into the e-box. So that's the plan. Look at that, huh? Fits nicely. I'll have to adjust the valve cover, basically, in order to clear this. But right now, seems to fit pretty nice. Everything's going good. We gotta take these puppies, right? Cut it, and put it in there as well, so that it kind of helps to make a nice, good seal. But let's put the cover on, see what happens. Nice and clean. Yeah, and obviously I'm gonna repaint all of this and make it all, I'm gonna get it all nice and dolled up for the show, for the looks, right? Everything looks really good here. I'm pretty happy. Obviously, this guy too needs to go in there and find a home, but that probably might end up sitting right in there. Actually, might be a good place for it to go, just like that. But yeah, this is pretty cool. Nice and clean. Nice and clean. All right, a little cutaway here. Did do the shifter mechanism. Got Garagistics ADA rear shifter carrier bushing there. It was a little bit sloppy, so I had to add one of these little yellow nylon washers on the stud of the selector arm, and that really tightened things up quite a bit on the Dynon shifter. And everything is basically installed and ready to go. Let's take a look and see how it shifts. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Oh, and reverse. There's a little detent for reverse. Up, good to go. Now it's time to install the oil cooler, which is here. As you can see, the lower part of the thread was NPT, so we put some Teflon tape on that, and the upper part is an AN10. And it basically sits right here on the brackets. And these guys end up getting screwed on into these compression fittings. As you can see, cannot forget your O-rings before you get this in. Now, I just want to set this guy just like that, just so it doesn't fall. Well, the puppy will fall. Yeah, so we got to get that in, and then we'll start working on intercooler. Let's work to get the intercooler and charge piping installed. In order to do that, now we gotta final weld our new seams that we made that basically reroute the outlet of the turbos over to the intercooler. And there's 4 seams to weld up. So let's do that now. Okay, it took a little while. I got the hang of it. Welding aluminum tubes is hard, but I got the hang of it. They're done. My tubes are now done, and now we can install them and get the entire intercooler routing done. Okay, let's talk about what I just did over the last couple minutes. I did a preliminary fitting of all of the charge piping just to see what needs to be tweaked, modified, trimmed, or cut. As you can see, I blasted this piece and that piece. They're gonna get painted. This blue will be replaced with black. Don't worry about that. And everything else here, I just wanted to see what I needed to change for the tubing in order to get it to fit better. As you can see, there's an interference here that will need to be adjusted. And just kind of figure it out. Like, this is not good. I don't like the way this is as well. This is what's called it's called like a bulb fitting, and it essentially just accounts for misalignment. But the misalignment here is too much. In fact, it's so much so that it wants to be in this kind of location here. I'm pushing it in this direction. So I'm actually going to acquire a 45, and I'm going to end up putting a 45 here instead of this this hose bulb connector. And I'm actually getting pretty close to first start here on this, okay? I still need to do some DME wiring. I'm not going to do much more with the radiator or the tubing because I still need to put my reservoir here, my power steering reservoir here as well. So there's a little bit more work there that needs to be done, but that should not preclude me from doing a first start. What will preclude me from doing first start is getting the wiring all set up. So let's take a look at the DME wiring inside of the electronics bag and get that all sorted out, at least understand what the pins are and what the connectors are and where they go. All right, so now that we got all of the basics essentially installed and ready to go, we're gonna take a look at some of the wiring. Now, we basically want to concentrate at wiring at the DME, making sure that the starter's getting power, that the C101 on the actual chassis is getting power and getting fuel, and the fuel pump is priming. I want to do all these little checks to make sure that everything is getting power to the appropriate places before we do any first crank. So let's go through the DME wiring and kind of explore what it is so that we can understand what needs to be connected and what doesn't. So here, I know it looks intimidating having a big bunch of jumbled wires, but it's really not that bad. So you have this big guy here, and then there's another one right here, okay? This guy here as well. These are your connectors that basically connect to the DME. Both of these guys connect straight to the DME. The only difference between these two in particular is that there is a space right here for the X6001. That is your body side harness connector that has things like your tach and your fuel pump and your the oil pressure and all those other types of signals that the DME uses. However, there is another connector that deals with the other signals that you definitely need to be aware of, and that is this guy right here. This is your 6011. It has a lot of wires on it, maybe about 4 or 5 wires. Actually 5. And you don't need all these wires to be hooked up in order to get the car started, but you can see here that there is a thick white wire, second pin from the left. That is your starter wire. That basically goes to your key or your black wire with a yellow stripe on C101. So that basically connects right into that. The other one here, this yellow one with a green stripe, this smaller gauge wire, is your power wake up. It actually activates and wakes up the DME. That goes to switched power. Another wire that you need to have is the orange wire needs to also be hooked up to power. So 2 power wires, 1 starter wire, and then you also have this white wire here. That one there is if you do have AC hooked up, that is your AC compressor. That activates the compressor. So we're not going to do AC on this. I know I've got a lot of flack about not having AC in this car, but I do have it in the E36 M3, and it will have AC. So continuing to move on here, obviously some bigger ones here. This one is ground. That's definitely just going straight to ground. And then we have a couple that are also going to power. This one here, this red one here is going to power. And then there's also a lug somewhere around here that's also going to power. There it is. This also is going to battery power as well. Don't forget, when you start your car for the first time, this guy is power that goes straight to the fuse box. That basically powers on the rest of the car. That goes right to your ignition switch of obviously of other things. It goes to your ignition switch. When you turn the key, that turns accessory power on, which in the C101 is the green wire, or green wire with the yellow stripe, or sometimes it's green with a white stripe as well. So you need to wire that accessory power right back here as your switched power to the X6001 that I was talking about earlier. That activates your main relay right here, and that sends power to the DME as it's needed. So all these other connectors, I did not rewire these. These are just basically just connectors that we'll see. But it's just, I know it's a little bit overly complicated right now, but it isn't as complex as you think it is. So I want to wire the C101. I want to wire power wire to this, and of course, remember we got our wires here. This basically are the 3 wires. 2 are for coolant temperature, and 1 is for oil pressure. We need to route that to the C101 as well. We'll use the fly bridge too. The fly bridge is that one piece I was explaining earlier that is going to go across. We're going to mount it to these locations here, and we're going to end up making it a nice slick setup, and then obviously our cowlings will go on top of that. But all the wiring and electronics is quite simple, so we'll end up doing that right now. So effectively, I've been working on power distribution here, right? I want to make sure that the power distribution of positive 12 volts and grounding is good and solid inside the box. Now I've got my power, as you saw me assemble this earlier. Basically, it's a piece of angle that's tied to the positive terminal that then goes back to battery here. These two bolts are essentially welded nuts on the back sides of these, and it fits different sizes. So this is an M10, or yeah, M10, and this is an M6, and they're basically threaded nuts on the back side, and that allows me to do things like put the power over here for the starter, and all of the DME powers and stuff like that on a smaller M6 to go right in there, right? That seems pretty easy. And then of course, my ground is right in here, and it's welded in, right? It's a flange nut upside down, and that allows me to get things like the grounds installed just like that. And then just put a nut over that. So I'll have my grounds and I'll have my powers all set up in place. And of course, the switch power is going to be coming in from the actual car, so that's easy there too. So now it's just a matter of just hooking it up and turning the key. All right, now it is Electronics 101 for the C101. I had extracted 4 main pins. These are large gauge pins. You can see the 2 over here. One is green and one is green with a yellow stripe. Those are both your accessory power. Basically, when you turn the key on to the on position before starting, and after you start the car, it keeps your power engaged. But it turns it off after you turn the key off, which is good. Here is your notorious black with a yellow stripe. This is your start wire, which is a momentary 12 volts source. When you turn the key to start the car, it goes through the X6001 connector on the N54 harness, and that goes straight into the starter solenoid to momentarily activate your starter. And then this guy here, this purple with a red stripe, is your fuel pump, which goes directly to the fuel pump on the chassis side, but on the engine side, we'll end up putting it to a relay to basically just have the fuel pump constantly on. Now, to extract the pins and safely and effectively without damaging the pins, I used a Deutsch extractor. These are really, really useful and a perfect fit for extracting these pins. Now, these pins are easily accessible from the back. There's a lock there. There's a little tooth mechanism in here. As you can see, the tooth mechanism, if you turn it counterclockwise with these 2 raised pins, you can literally give it a slight rotation and unlock all those pins. Then you just use the tool here, and you stick it into the pin, and you hear a little click, and then you use your hands or pliers, and you just pull back out on the wire, and it just pulls right out. So then you can click it back in anytime, which is pretty cool. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be taking these wires and basically snaking them over the bridge over to the N54 MSD81 harness, and we're going to be just wiring it up to make sure that we have our accessory power to turn the DME on, our start wire, and of course our fuel pump. Everything else here on this C101 is important. It basically goes to the instrument cluster, and it powers a lot of other things like, coolant temperature, oil pressure, coolant level, all the things that are going from the engine basically back to the cluster and the active check control. So it's really important that these also do get routed back so that the car acts and feels like a normal car. So let's go forward and work on getting the C101 wiring all the way over to the electronics bay over there and clean all that up. All right, I got 12 volts applied to the car. Let's turn it on. Okay, good. Now, these 2 green ones are accessory wires, so let's take the accessory wire and turn it into the fuel pump, which is right here. Just basically put 12 volts to the fuel pump. Whoa, I hear it. I got a leak. Where's it coming from? Oh boy. So when powering up the fuel pump, you can hear it. I got rid of the leaks that were down there, right? Just tightened up a couple clamps. But still have some leaks up in here. You can see that the leak is coming from the output of the fuel filter. Now, the fuel filter is definitely in need of a replacement, so I gotta do that. But I got the bucket underneath it for now, right? I got a bucket there, and I'm just gonna let whatever fuel leaks. Now, I gotta get to first start for my fans. For you guys, I gotta get there. And I'm not just gonna keep you guys in suspense, although I probably should, but I'm not gonna, because you guys are loyal and I appreciate everything that you guys do for the channel and for me. So I'm gonna get this thing started up, even if there's a tiny little bit of a leak, but all I'm gonna do is just get it to fire up. Let's see if we can just do that. Let's finish up the wiring from the C101 over to the DME, and then we'll get this thing going. Okay, I think I have everything that I need right now to do a first crank. We're not gonna do first start yet, we're gonna do crank. Okay, in order to do the crank, I'm going to be removing or leaving the DME. There's an MSD81 stock DME unplugged. I'm also not going to be firing up the fuel pump. I already checked for leaks and I have some, but not a big deal. I'm gonna work around that. I have my starter wire that's going directly to the starter solenoid. I also have my power wire. This is accessory power. When the key is turned into the on position, it activates and turns on the main relay here. The X6001 is connected to this connector right here, and that goes to the CAS unit and the starter key and the start button. I have my accelerator pedal and I have my OBD2 port. Now, for those of you who are asking about the harness that I'm using here to wire this in, this is that Antunes harness that I tried to use on the E36 swap, but I still had that 2FA4 code. And that's okay. I'm gonna have codes, I'm gonna have issues. I just wanna make sure that this thing fires up. That's the most important thing, is that it just fires up, that the DME is talking to the engine and that it's firing up when it should, and everything is working. So I wanna do a fire up or crank, and then I wanna make sure that everything is good there, and then we start connecting power to the DME, hooking it up, and then we can just do our first start. Okay guys, so before we do first start, I wanna be clean with you guys 100%. I have not tried to start this. I have not started it. I have not done anything behind the scenes that would preclude me from... Okay guys, I wanna basically just lay it all out on the table. I am very nervous. I'm always nervous about first start. No matter how many engine swaps you do, and I've done many of them, I'm always nervous for the first start. It's like popping your cherry. Every single engine swap is a little different, but the first start feeling is always the same. Will it start? Will I have any catastrophic issues? What do I need to take care of? What kind of codes am I gonna get? Am I gonna have to pull out the engine again because of an issue that I found that I should have taken care of earlier? All these types of questions are all going through my mind as I'm turning that key for the first time and getting it to start. So I'm sure you guys share in that when as you guys do your own engine swaps. But yeah, I'm very nervous. I'm not really showing up, but I'm very nervous, and that nervousness turns into happiness and cautious optimism when it does actually start. It's very, very nerve-wracking when you do a first start on an engine, especially when it's integrated into a different chassis. So whatever, man, let's just do this and hook it all up and get this thing working. Well, not to keep you guys in suspense too much, but I just hooked up the DME and everything started to just basically turn on. The throttle body calibrated, which is what it should do when you do your key on, and I actually plugged in the DME while the key was still in the on position, so that was my bad, but not really my bad. I mean, I saw the second I plugged it in, everything kind of just woke up. So I am very, very, very excited and optimistic about this first start being successful. So I turned the key off. I'm just gonna start it now. So yeah, I'm keeping you guys in suspense. You guys deserve that much, right? A little bit of suspense, keep it going, right? Okay, key on. Everything wakes up. Fuel pump. Start button. Start button and start.
All right, first start's complete. That was good. That was a rush. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was good. And let's regroup in the next video as we take care of the fallout and what needs to be done now that the first start has been completed. My name is Frank Macalusa from Garageaholic, and I am out of here. You guys have a great weekend. Later!